So today in our What Just Happened segment, which is where we talk about things from the broader macro tech development world and share them with our legal audience, we were going to dive into what is called the AI 2027 report. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Bridget, to sort of summarize what this report is. It's basically a futuristic prediction of the next few years of AI development, but I'll let you take it from there.
I'll do my best and then you can supplement as always. But my attention was drawn to this report because the artificial intelligence podcast hosts Paul Reitzer and Mike Kaput were talking about it on Tuesday. And then on Friday, the Hard Fork podcast host Kevin Roos and Casey Newton. Sorry, Casey. I love you, Casey. I don't know why I forgot your name.
I love Casey.
We're talking about it as well. In fact, they interviewed, one of the authors of this report, and so, I can see he's also been interviewed basically on every kind of tech podcast in the last
Mhm.
week. So it's just kind of making the rounds in the AI community, and therefore I just got interested enough to try and pull it up and take a look. And basically, it's this very, very detailed, like, scenario, forecasting document, although it's written in a nice narrative form, actually. It's quite easy to read, that predicts the ways in which, AI might evolve over the next few years. And they predict this very dramatic takeoff around 2027, which I understand from one of the interviews, and I can't now remember which one, was actually pushed back a year from their original thinking. Like, originally, I think they thought everything that they predict happening in 2027 was going to happen a year earlier. But after the work they did, they pushed that back a year. The lead researcher, I don't know if it's a lead researcher, but one of them was an OpenAI researcher. I did not know this, but learned again from one of the interviews that Daniel Kokotajlo, he left OpenAI when he became concerned about safety issues, actually. So I don't know. I don't know how, if that should influence how we think about his predictions or not. But that was interesting to know. And now he works at this not for profit located in Berkeley, California, called the AI Futures Project. And he and his co-authors, believe that AI could surpass human intelligence by 2027, and, that the transformative changes that will result from that are ones that, nobody is planning for. Basically, I'm summarizing here, but they're, tumultuous and, um, really impactful, and we are really thinking very hard about what that's gonna mean. I think the way he puts it is, within this decade, there will be enormous changes that exceed those of the Industrial Revolution. And I think we've sort of heard this in other places before. I mean, it sort of reminds me of Dario Amadei's Machines of Loving Grace from a few months back, and we've had a few essays from other leaders of some of the leading labs, that say similar things about the trajectory. So the trajectory, in a way, isn't surprising. I think one reason why people are taking note is because Daniel and, some of his others, some of the other people on his team have a very good history of predicting, AI outcomes, and they have for many years now. So their future forecasting has been right, historically, and because they're not associated with the lab, you can't really give it a discount of them trying to hype their own technology, right? So they're really just trying to get it right. Like, in his interview on the Hard Fork podcast, he said he's, like, really eager for people to tell him why he's wrong. Like, they have there's, like, a portal where you can, send ideas for where you think they missed a step, in their very robust forecasting methodology, and they will think about them and respond to them, and, like, they wanted it to be the start of a conversation, and one where, they hope they're wrong about, like, the bad outcomes, which is part of, what they've kinda mapped out. but they really wanted to start a conversation. I think that's, a pretty decent explanation of what it's about. Does that seem right to you?
Yeah, no, that was excellent. And the only thing that I would add, like you said, I think the lead author had written a piece before ChatGPT emerged, basically predicting the entire ChatGPT moment. And I think I heard on one of the podcasts that the only thing that was flawed in his original projections was that he anticipated that they would take longer than they actually did in real life. So he was a little bit more conservative than real life, but I think most of what he predicted turned out to be true, which is why people are paying attention to it. And the other pieces that struck me really were um, the idea of this escalating war for AI supremacy between the US and China, and this paper came out before the tariff war really started as well, which is sort of interesting because a few weeks before this paper came out, I listened to another podcast with another, expert in geopolitics and AI, and their theory was sort of that the major powers in the world would ultimately be incentivized to collaborate to try to shape the future in a way that was responsible as this AI is becoming more and more powerful. And obviously, it seems to me that that's highly unlikely, more unlikely now than it was even when this paper came out. But the other thing that it made me think, so it talked about the political ramifications and this accelerating arms race between the US and China. It also talked about the escalating public backlash around AI as we start to see more and more job disruption. And if you go in the report, which like I don't think people necessarily need to read the report unless they're interested. It is visually like super cool the way that they've laid it out. And they have sort of a dashboard on the right hand side of the page. And I think it's at AI2027.com, AI-2027.com. But one of the, pieces of information that where their prediction changes is the public's perception, the percentage of the public who perceive AI to be a major problem that needs to be addressed currently is at around 1%. And in 2 years, when this superintelligence emerges, the dashboard has it at around 20%. And of course, we're seeing all sorts of instability already in our system. So the idea that there would be even more instability to me seemed like something to take note of. And I think the reason why they created the report was not necessarily to be right about everything, but to raise awareness so people start having better conversations about it.
Yeah, I think that's right. And the one thing that was I don't know, it seemed convincing enough to me, a non-technologist, for why we see such acceleration once, as they put it, AI gets to be better than humans at coding. Is that at that point the AI coder, the sort of super intelligent AI coders can supervise a lot of other super intelligent AI coders, and the acceleration of progress at that point just really takes off. And that that sort of makes sense to me. I can see how that acceleration happens if, in fact, um, AI becomes super intelligent and better at coding than any humans are. So, yeah, I think it's worth knowing it's out there and knowing people are taking it seriously, and maybe even listening to one of the many interviews I think you can find. I see that Dwarkish Patel also interviewed Daniel, and so I haven't listened to that one yet, but I plan to, just because I think he does great interviews. So, interesting piece of work. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought one thing for legal audiences that was interesting in the projection analysis was that one of the early pieces of the roadmap to getting to superintelligence was really a deeper focus on research agents, which to me just feels so squarely within the ambit of what lawyers do. So I think because of the group of people focused on this, so much attention is paid to coding. And that is, of course, like where the use cases are now and where the early impact is. But the research piece stood out to me, and at the same time, I was thinking about I was in San Francisco recently, and, they say when you drive through a city, you can tell exactly what's going on by what's on their billboards, and, like, I'm in Philly, and everything is personal injury attorneys and jewelry stores. Um, and there's not anything really going on in the AI landscape publicly. But if you go through San Francisco, it feels like you are in the future. Like every single billboard is about AI. And so I'm like everybody else, like my takeaway is like it's good to have people thinking about these things. My sense is probably they're so close to it that it will be a little bit longer until the rest of the world feels the impact of whatever is happening where they are.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I don't know that, even if they're completely right about forecasting the technology, um, I'm not like, it seems to me there are a bunch of other places along the way where there are gonna be log jams, before, um, eh, the technology completely disrupts everything about our lives. But it's interesting to know, that it's out there and people are talking about it and that it doesn't come from one of the labs. I think that's kind of what's most important about it.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting for our audience to know. I mean, people listening to this might be deeply steeped in AI and really interested in it, but we both know we visit parts of the profession where nobody's talking about it. Like this is the first time they've heard about it. And so I find these things interesting just to share with my lawyer friends, even though they're sick of hearing about it. Like there are people, all the people that don't talk to me at pizza night anymore, like, there are people who think, 2 to 3 years from now that this technology will be superhuman. So it's just kind of mind-bending to talk to lawyers who aren't thinking about it at all. Thank you for tuning in to 2030 Vision, AI and the Future of Law. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Stay informed and inspired as we continue to explore the AI-driven future of the legal profession. We'll see you next time.